And my next guest, I would like to invite, he is CEO of Canada Mobile Electric. Welcome, Stephen Mtizwa.
Don't let my folder scare you. I'm not going to be here for more than an hour, I promise you. Well, I am humbled and honored at the same time to participate in this great rally that addresses a very important topic and that we find ourselves in at this point in time. We'll delve into what I'm going to be talking about right away. My topic today is striving for an actively anti-racist Canada, and the subtitle is intentionally integrating. Well, in my personal experience of living in 3 different continents, I was born in Africa, in Zimbabwe, lived briefly in Europe, and moved to North America, and I lived in Texas for about 10 years, and then moved to Canada. I've been in Canada for the past 10 years or so. Now, I've had the opportunity to observe the tensions generated when members of plural societies compete to access privileges and resources. And my conclusion is that 2 racist tendencies exist. And while one tendency is born out of ignorance, the other, in my humble view, is a product of outright wickedness, and like our premier says, from sick souls. Now, the one that stems from ignorance is by far more dominant and more prevalent, and unfortunately, it seeps into our public and private institutions. I'm not going to dwell much on that. That is born out of depraved sick souls, except to suggest that all men and women of goodwill within and outside government must rise up to educate these few elements who are an enemy to inclusive plural societies. And these few bad apples and the tendencies they represent must not be allowed to thrive in Canada. They must not be allowed to thrive in our province. Right. So I'd like to focus on ignorance-induced racist tendencies, and I'll give you an operational definition here. There are 2 levels of racism that we face. One is individual racism, and another is systemic racism. Now, in individual racism, that's any form of color-induced bias and discriminatory practice by an individual or group against another individual or group at interpersonal relationship level. Then we have systemic racism, any form of color-induced bias and discriminatory practice which is entrenched and normalized within structures and practices of corporate organizations, government departments, and government agencies, which produces unequal outcomes against racialized groups and which prevents equitable and equal access to privileges, resources, and opportunities within a plural society. Regrettably, it appears that systemic racism exists in our society today. I'm, however, encouraged and consoled that as a society, we are willing to confront this menace of racism, otherwise we wouldn't be here today. Now, I'm just going to be sharing from my experiences. Like I said, I have been here in Canada for about 10 years. I moved to Edmonton March 2009 and started applying for jobs. I've been sending resumes and I'm getting no response whatsoever. And I had my suspicions as to why. So I figured out, let me rule out my suspicions. I started sending 2 resumes at the same time. One of the resumes, I'll make it a little bit different. My last name is Mtizwa, which is distinctly not, doesn't sound English. So I would put on the other resume an English sounding last name. To protect the innocent, I will not tell you what name I use. But here's the sad thing. Almost 90% of the resumes that I sent with an English sounding name, they got a response and an invitation for an interview. The ones that had my name, I got 2 interview opportunities. And when I went to the interviews, the 2 that I went to, you know what they say? Your resume is great, but you know all these 2 familiar statements. We cannot hire you because you don't have Canadian experience. That's bad enough right there, but it gets worse. My colleagues that had moved in from different countries that were white would go to the very interviews that had come out of, and guess what? With no Canadian experience, they would be hired. I'll leave this one here. I had to be creative to create my own employment. So with my knowledge and expertise, I approached a local organization in Edmonton and helped them set up an innovative concept. And as this project started thriving, the organization, guess what? Hired a white manager who had no clue as far as the business concept was concerned, and I had to report to him. That was obviously frustrating, to say the least. However, that particular experience motivated me to launch my own business. Now, when we were ready to launch our business, which caters for seniors, I reached out to the then Minister of Seniors, George Vanderberg. Now, Minister Vanderberg was so excited about our innovative business. He was excited about how our business concept would result in huge cost savings to the province. In the course of the interaction, he went on to tell my wife and I how his parents had emigrated from the Netherlands to Canada as a young couple in search of a better life, and how he was raised by his immigrant parents, and how he became a minister in Alberta. A very neat story. He was so excited, he took us on a tour of the legislature building. And as we were walking, he said, Stephen and Miriam is my wife, I want to tell you this thing. Canada is a land of opportunity. If you are willing to work hard, you can be anything you want. Sorry, I just needed an excuse to show off my beautiful Well, needless to say, this encounter buoyed us and made us feel welcome in Canada. It made up for all the bad experiences we had faced prior to this, and we were certainly emboldened to face the future. Now, nevertheless, we still face challenges that were obviously discriminatory. And the biggest one that comes to mind is when one senior official from one of the largest provincial agencies blatantly and shockingly told us via an official email that they wanted to take our business idea to give it to someone else to run. Go figure. I went back to the Minister of Seniors. This time, Minister George Vanderberg has been changed. I think he was a chief whip now. And Honorable Dave Quest had been appointed the Minister of Seniors. Upon hearing this, he was devastated. He literally turned red. He could not believe that this was happening to us in Canada in this day and age. He apologized profusely to us and promised that the situation will be remedied without getting into much details. He wrote an amazing letter that I hang in my wall, on my wall in my office. That was swift. Now, you would think we'd never again experience such challenges. And as I stand here today, we have two pending situations. And I'm glad one of the lawyers who's helping me is here. One of them attracted the intervention of a public interest commission. The other one is a private entity. I've escalated it to the vice president of that organization. We are hoping for a great outcome. Now, the examples that I've shared are a testament to the fact that when good people in places of authority not only speak up, but act against racism, we would definitely triumph against this menace. Now, the question then becomes, whose responsibility is it to find enduring solutions to racism? My humble submission is that the solution to racism is the responsibility of all of us without exception. My experience has taught me to be intentional about integrating into my community. And as I continue to do so, I've been getting amazingly positive outcomes. Now, one example comes to mind, and I think this will suffice. Well, I moved to Calgary from Edmonton in 2014 in August. The very week that I arrived in Calgary, I saw a billboard with a notice inviting people to attend an aging in place event. I was attracted to the billboard notice due to the nature of our business. So I went to the office of the event organizer. On getting to his office, I cited three people. There was a Chinese Canadian, a Mexican Canadian, and a Caucasian Canadian. Talk about plurality and multiculturalism on display. This site was to make a lasting impression on me. Long story short, I was invited to participate in organizing and planning for the event, and eventually was an exhibitor at that event as well, which, by the way, turned out to be a tremendous and resounding success. Fast forward, one thing led to the other, and I subsequently found myself sitting as one of the directors on the Calgary Walkwood Constituency Board. You know why? Because that Chinese-Canadian man that I saw that day was none other than Honorable Jason Nguyen. And he gave me a chance to interact not only with him, but with the community that I was in, and with different people from different backgrounds. And my apologies here. Sorry, I got a little bit emotional here, sorry. Yeah. Now, it goes without saying that integrating with our community and with the Honorable Jason Nguyen is launched me on a different trajectory for the better. And Jason Nguyen's team is comprised of people from around all corners of the world. And I think one of them is from Mars. Jason, where do you think Baron is from? Amazing. There you go. And as I say, it's everybody's responsibility to curb racism. I'm not exempt, and the company that I run is not exempt. Now, at Canada Mobile X-Ray, which is the company that I run, our policy is to treat everyone like we would like to be treated, to intentionally integrate and engage with all stakeholders in our communities, our clients and individuals. It is in this vein that Canada Mobile X-Ray has been giving back to various communities across Alberta. We demonstrated this during this pandemic. We've been donating PPEs to various organizations that include Edge Care. We've been buying pizza lunches for over 2,000 frontline workers, and I'm glad CTV was there to cover when we were doing some of those things. We've been donating cash, masks, and infrared thermometers to organizations like the Mass at Sea, as well as Care West facilities. At this juncture, permit me to just appreciate Minister Nguyen. He made time out of his obviously busy schedule to accompany me to such events when we were making those donations. Thank you very much, Honorable. And also, since the outbreak, we have been providing free mobile X-ray services to our seniors who cannot afford them. The service is not covered yet by AHS, and we didn't want our seniors to be exposed to this virus. Why are we doing that? It is our belief at Canada Mobile X-Ray that as we do this, we are becoming an integral part of one multicultural mosaic, which we are building and which we aspire to as Albertans and as Canadians. Ladies and gentlemen, as I go to sit down, I would like to share a great story. Which in my view exemplifies what it means to be great Canadians and what it takes to build a great Canadian community. You see the photo that I'm holding? From your left to right, you got Whitney Ray Osas, Nicole McCarthy, Ruth Legace, and Elizabeth Dio. These 4 friends have all been accepted into medical school. The CBC report covered this on 28 June 2020, celebrating the young Albertans for this accomplishment. This is not only a story about 4 Black young ladies who for 4 years at the University of Calgary were friends and classmates, and who after graduating from the University of Calgary in spring, that's a couple of months ago, were accepted into medical schools, 2 in Calgary, 1 in Edmonton, 1 in Toronto. This story is about Canada. This story is what the opportunities are available in this great province. And I want to tell you, out of this great story comes another great story. It is for this reason that I will humbly and respectfully ask us to appreciate the unique and exemplary gesture of one distinguished Albertan in our midst today, who happens to be the MLA for Calgary East and Honorable Minister of Community and Social Services, Minister Rajan. When she saw this, she celebrated it. She made a comment on Facebook and says, I love this. I would love to meet these young ladies and personally congratulate them. This cause excitement in our community. It's reverberating. And people are saying, these are the kinds of people that are going to make Canada great. And we thank you for that, Minister Rajan. I've said all that I've said to say this. Racism exists in our society. Systemic racism exists in our institutions. However, if we are intentional about putting an end to this racism in our institutions, it has to start with us as individuals, especially those of us who are able to influence those that are in power. Thank you very much.